All right, what up, Leonidas? Coming in from my last day in Medellin, Colombia, and I thought it would be a fantastic time to tell you the story of when I got robbed here in Colombia. This happened several years ago. I was traveling on the northern coast of Colombia between the cities of Cartagena and Barranquilla. And during that time, my buddy and I, we boarded a small bus that would transport us from one location to the next. We decided to sit in the very last seats of the bus, in the very back of the bus. And in the back of the bus, it was 4 seats. So I sat on one end and my friend sat on the other end. Anyways, the bus starts moving. I plug in my headphones, start listening to music, and I start reading my Kindle e-reader. I fall asleep. I wake up, and when I wake up, there's 2 Colombian guys sitting next to us, 2 young Colombian guys. And one of them starts chatting with me. And he starts chatting. At the time, my Spanish wasn't on point, so I didn't really know what he was saying, but he asked me, hey, do you mind if I play with your e-reader, your book? And being Canadian hospitality, I decide, you know what, sure, here you go. And he starts playing with it. He asks me, does it have internet? I say no. He hands it back over. Then he says, oh, can I play with your phone? Can I listen to the music you've been listening to? And I say, sure. So I pass him my phone and my headphones, and he starts listening to it. And at that point, you know, he's listening. And eventually I say, okay, you know what? I want to return back to reading, pass over the phone. And at this point he says, no, play something else. And I think to myself, this is strange. Like, why is he telling me what to do with my own phone? So at this point, I unplug the headphones and take out the headphones from his ears and put them into my backpack. And next thing I do is I take the phone and I put the phone into my backpack as well. At this point, he looks at me and he does this. Instead of knowing what it means, I tell him, well, I don't know what that means. Like, you want to have a drink? You want something specific? I don't understand what that means. At this point, he turns to me, faces me completely, looks me in the eyes, and once again does the same thing. And I tell him, like, look, I don't understand. You quieres tomar algo? You want to drink something? Quieres bailar? You want to dance? I don't know what that means. So he taps his buddy next to him, and his buddy opens his bag and pulls out a switchblade, right? And the kind of knife that basically opens up like this. Hands it over to the guy next to me, and the guy next to me starts playing with his nails with the knife. And at this point, I tell him, okay, I understand. What do you want? Right? And the guy says, I don't know. And I said, do you want money? And the guy says, yeah, give me money. I tell him, okay. And at this point, I start to negotiate with him, right? I tell him, look, I will give you money, but only 10 minutes before the next destination, before we arrive in the next city. Because in my reality, I knew that if I give him anything now, him and his buddy are simply gonna rob us clean. Because in my backpack, I had my laptop, cash, other electronics, documents, passports, and everything. So I thought to myself, okay, I have to give him just a little bit in order to keep them preoccupied before we finally get to the next destination. But once again, I tell him, look, I will give you something only 10 minutes before we get to the next destination. And he says, no, give it to me now. And I said, no, dude, relax. I will give you cash 10 minutes before the next destination, and you have to give your buddy the knife back. You have to put the knife away. So we keep chatting, we keep negotiating. Time keeps flowing. And eventually he starts to trust me. And he says, okay, fine. So he takes the knife and he gives it back to his buddy. And the buddy's like, what? Okay. So the buddy puts the knife back in the bag and we keep conversing, the guy next to me. At this point, the buddy next to him starts getting very agitated. He starts saying, like, what is going on here? Why are we not receiving something? You know, what is going on here? So I can see that this agitation, he's getting very annoyed by the current circumstances of not receiving any money, nothing at all. And I can see this. So I tell the guy next to me, I say, look, I will give you money, right? But I want you to hand it over to your buddy, okay? To make him relax just a little bit. So the guy next to me says, okay, fine, sounds good. And in my pocket, I had a fat stack of Colombian pesos. So I reach in to my pocket and I pull out a 50,000 peso bill, right? And the 50,000 peso bill is like $12 or $13. I hand it over to the guy next to me And instead of him passing it over to his buddy, he just ends up pocketing it. So the guy next to me ends up putting it into his pocket, into his own pocket. And the guy next to him starts getting even more agitated. He's thinking, what the fuck is going on? What is going on here? Like, how? Let's just take out this, he starts gesturing like a weapon, like a gun out of the bag, and let's just, rob them. And the guy tells him, no, dude, it's okay. It's cool. So at this point, the guy next to him gets up and sits in the seat in front of me. So at this point, I have a Colombian to my right, and I have a Colombian right in front of me. And the guy now in front of me, the more agitated, the more annoyed guy, looks at me and he says, you know what they call me? And I'm like, no, what do they call you? And he says, they call me Andre, el Diablo, so the devil. And I think to myself, okay, very nice. So at this point, I can see they're kind of very, he's a little bit more aggressive. And at this point, I tell my buddy who's pretending to sleep in the corner, he knows exactly what's happening at this moment, like we're being robbed, but he is pretending to sleep. I tell him, yo, dude, pass me some cash. So he reaches into his pocket, passes me another 50, so another $13, and I hand it over to the guy in front of me. He calms down, sits down, and now at this point, the guy next to me starts explaining me these stories. He says, you see that scar on his face, the guy in front of me? That scar is from knife fighting, right? That scar is from knife fighting. And then the guy next to me picks up his leg and shows me just above his ankle. Do you see this hole right here? That's from basically being shot, right? So these are, guys that are in a very violent situation here in Colombia. At this point, I decide to ask them, like, how old are you guys? The one guy that I've been chatting with the whole time, he tells me that they're basically 17 years old. So I say, all right, whatever. The ride continues. We're going into like 20 minutes now, 30 minutes now, almost 40 minutes. And eventually, the guy next to me gets up, pulls out his BlackBerry. So he had a BlackBerry at the time, probably stolen. And he points it at me. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. He was going to point it at me. He was going to take a photo. And he was going to say, if you say anything, we're going to find you from your photo. So the scenario, exactly as it played out in my head, plays out in real life. He gets up, pulls out his BlackBerry, points it at me, takes a photo, and he says, if you say anything, we're going to find you. And as he takes the photo, I basically do a big cheesy smile like, good for you. All right. You can try to find me, buddy. Obviously, it's not going to happen. And now he says, okay, give me any other coins you have. So I reach into my pocket again. I reach out for whatever coins I had. Maybe it was like $2 or $3 US worth of Colombian pesos of coins. I hand them over. Eventually, the bus stops. And the other guy, the Andre El Diablo, says, okay, give us cash for the one more guy that's at the front. So there's actually 3 guys in the bus who are gonna rob us clean. And I say, okay, sure. I reach back into my pocket. I pull out another 50,000 pesos. I hand it over. They all leave the bus. They get on a motorcycle and they ride away. And now the bus starts going again. At this point, my buddy magically wakes up and he says, we've been robbed. Stop the bus. We've been robbed. The bus stops. Everybody on the bus is freaking out. The bus is just 2 gringos, so 2 foreigners, myself and my buddy, and the rest are all Colombians. And they're just in shock that this has just happened, right? A police motorbike comes and eventually escorts us to the police station. And at the police station, the police captain starts interviewing us. He says, okay, so what did they take? Who was it? What they look like? And I tell him, well, look, they only took some cash. And he's like, they only took cash? Well, that's amazing. You still have your passport, electronics, and everything. It's fine that they just took cash because it's very unlikely that we're going to find them. So eventually, he picks up his walkie-talkie, his radio, and he gets a call. Oh, we found someone. Okay, yeah, bring them in. So a couple minutes go by, and a car pulls into the police station parking lot. And in the front is a driver, and in the back are 2 Colombian guys. So basically, to explain what happened, the 2 Colombian guys that robbed us were more like on a caramel color. The 2 guys that they end up bringing in are these 2 black Colombian guys. So I thought to myself, wow, this is almost like North American racism, where they just find 2 black people off the street and they bring them in and then they say, okay, were these the guys? Anyways, I tell them, no, it wasn't them. and they go off on their way. The police captain says, okay, don't worry, we're gonna transport you now to your final destination in Barranquilla. And I say, cool. We hop into a police cruiser. He drops us off at our destination, and that ends the story. At this point, I decide to post the story on Facebook, right? And I post a story, and everyone's basically freaking out. Oh my God, are you okay? Is everything fine? You know, what do they take? But I'm completely neutral to the circumstances, because leading up to Latin America, I was traveling for quite some time, and leading up to this, every single time I would hear, it's not if you're gonna get robbed in Latin America, it's when. So it could be something very menial, like someone just pickpockets you. It could be something very simple, like someone steals your baseball cap. Or it could be something where someone robs you with a knife at nighttime, or tries to rob you with a knife, or tries to rob you with a gun. So it's not if it'll happen, but most likely when. So at this point, my psychology was already prepared for it. And at the same time, I had done a little bit of Krav Maga training, self-defense training in Toronto. So my self-confidence was a little bit high simply because of this martial arts training. So this is why I was able to negotiate with these guys who had a knife to my face and who potentially could have had a gun in their bag. Nonetheless, that was my Colombia story. This happened several years ago. Colombia is obviously improving in safety in certain parts. Here in Medellin, thus far, zero issues other than the occasional police check. But other than that, zero issues with crime, with people coming up to me with knives, etc. Just ignore them. If they do try to offer you something, just completely ignore them. Be vigilant, be mindful. Don't walk around by yourself, especially at nighttime. If you're a woman, be even extra vigilant. If you're a guy, don't get drunk and start walking around all by yourself confused. Something can potentially happen. So Leonidas, once again, in my last day here in Colombia, Medellin. If you've been in a similar situation, feel free to leave a comment. If you think I should have done something differently, feel free to leave a comment as well. I've posted this video previously as well, and people would sometimes comment that I should have fought back physically, but I was using a little bit of mathematical game theory because the bandits, it was in their best interest to keep it as a low profile to get as much as possible. Luckily, ultimately the scenario panned out quite well. So once again, Leonidas, Medellin, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next video. Salud.